So. Yeah. Okay, so then, before we start, generate correct motivation. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, what we did, contemplations, we did is kind of, the root, first potential we had, then we went into the root of the Lam-Rim, dependence on the virtuous friend, then how to take the essence by contemplating presumed rebirth, and then the interest in future lifetimes, contemplating death and impermanence, and then you see future lifetimes as different possibilities, up or low, and then we went into the few of the lower realms. Why? Because if you know the possibility, then you will generate a wish not to be born there, and you look for methods not to be born there, right? So, and then we go into refuge. Awaken. Yeah. So there's so many hells. So we could do the rest of the retreat, one hell every session. Maybe a bit too much for people, but yeah. But yeah, if you're by yourself and it benefits your mind, then you could do that, right? There's very extensive explanations at Lam-Rim. Yeah. Okay, so let's have a look at refuge. That the real safe direction for happiness in future states of existence, right? So there's the vision in the Lam-Rim that, when you take the essence, we say the three scopes, right? And according to the small scope, there's the twofold outline of, contemplating the suffering realms and then low realms. And the second outline is the methods to establish the higher realms, and in particular, the higher realm of presumed rebirth. Yeah. So then refuge comes. As you know, refuge has various types of refuge according to the three scopes of the Lam-Rim. Yeah, you have the refuge according to the small scope, as we do now. But you can also have the refuge according to the middling scope and the refuge according to the great scope. Yeah. So, generally speaking, when you talk about refuge, then you talk about the refuge of the middling scope, right? If you formally take refuge and you engage in the kasa, in the ceremony of taking refuge, then that's according to the middling scope. Yeah, that you take refuge in order to avoid the suffering of samsara. And you take a safe direction in the three jewels, and then we know that's the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, the Buddha teacher. The Dharma is the actual refuge, and the Sangha are, the helpers on the path. So if you take refuge in the actual refuge of the Dharma, as we know, is twofold, right? The two parts and the true cessation. And that makes sense, because if you take refuge in the true cessation, that's what you want. You want to have an absence of suffering, right? So if you take refuge in true cessation, that's exactly the safe direction. If your mind is free of afflictions, that's it, right? So that's not an external refuge, but a resultant refuge. Your own mind to be free of afflictions. Yeah, that's kind of your refuge. And then the method to do that is then the true paths, right? The realizations of emptiness that helps us to accomplish those true cessations. Yeah. So that's normally how we explain refuge, right? That's the refuge according to the milling scope. But you can also take refuge according to the small scope. Yeah. So what is your refuge in the small scope? Of course, the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, same thing. Yeah. But then, from the point of view of the actual refuge of the Dharma, of course, the true path, the true cessation is one, but just specific for the small scope is then practicing morality, right? And making stainless prayers and having these corporate conditions like practicing patience, practicing generosity. So you create causes for a precision rebirth. Yeah, so that's kind of mainly the refuge of the small scope. So you see also there, you don't take the real actual refuge is not really in an external source, right? You take refuge in, of course, the Buddha taught morality, and then you put it into practice, and that's your real refuge. Yeah, because if you practice morality, then you don't fall into low states of rebirth. Yeah, so that's kind of, if you just understand the causes for the lowest state of rebirth, it's basically, the heavy negative karma of killing and stealing and things like that, So if you don't engage in that by morality, then you stop the door of the lower realms. Yeah, so that's kind of a safe direction on the small scope, or the safe direction of refuge. Of course, you take refuge in Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, but then you take refuge in the Buddha, and then the Buddha says, okay, you don't want to be born in the lower realms, you practice morality, and you kasa. You make a stainless prayer, and those two are the main causes for precision rebirth. And then on the side, don't practice patience, because with anger you destroy positive potentials. Yeah, if you have positive potentials created with practicing morality, of practicing 8 Mayana precepts, or kasa, the vows for a lay person or the vows for ordained, but that involves effort, and for some maybe a bit hardship, I don't know, but so then if you then destroy that with anger, then that's not very wise. So then the Buddha said, okay, that's the main course, but create the corporate conditions of practicing patience and practicing generosity, that we get the right kasa, the right circumstances, right? Like we have now, we have a nice place, we financially able to do this, and we have the right conditions, basically, to conduct a retreat and do a retreat ourselves and find time. And so that comes from practicing generosity to create those causes and conditions. So there's a few things involved, right? That and of course, practicing effort helps us to build momentum also in the next life. That if you have effort in this life, then in the next life that will propel. So that also helps, right? Yeah. So you can see all the other perfections also play a role. Yeah. And then, of course, the perfection of concentration and wisdom also will help, because if you understand emptiness, or let's say realize emptiness, then afflictions become less. If afflictions become less, then practicing morality is very easy, because there's just no afflictions that cause you to create negative karma, right? Yeah, so you see that the 6 perfections are all related to that as well. But mainly practicing morality and stainless prayer, we say that's the main course for the precision rebirth, and then to get the right conditions, practice generosity, patience, effort, and concentration, and a bit wisdom, then of course that helps. Yeah. So then you can see that the actual refuge of the small scope is following the advice of the Buddha regarding morality. Yeah, that's one aspect. And morality is based on the law of cause and effect. That an omniscient mind, as the Buddha, completely understands cause and effect on the subtlest level. So that's why a person like a Buddha can establish the vows of morality. That makes sense. Because If you completely understand cause and effect, then you tell people, okay, don't do this, don't do that, practice this, practice that. Because if you completely understand what the results are of particular activities, either good or positive or negative or neutral, then you can teach people, oh, practice this, practice that. If you completely have the insight in cause and effect relationships of actions and their results, then you can completely set out a practice of morality. So if you study the Vinaya is all about morality. It's very interesting. In the Tripitaka, every text of what belongs to either of the three baskets has a homage in the beginning, right? We know the Sutra Pitaka is in the Sanskrit tradition. I pay homage to all Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. The Abhidhamma Pitaka, relating to the perfection of the high training of wisdom, says I pay homage to the youthful, Manjushri. Yeah. When it comes to morality, you say I pay homage to Omniscient One. It's very interesting. You pay homage to the Omniscient One. Why? Because the Omniscient One knows exactly the law of cause and effect. And the Omniscient One, because of that, can lay out a kind of morality for us. Don't engage in this, engage in that. Yeah, because the Omniscient One completely sees the results of our actions. And we only see certain aspects. We see anger produces suffering, but we don't see the correlation between a particular act we do in one lifetime and the results many lifetimes further down the line. We don't see that, but the Buddha does see that. So having that aspect, that we say pay homage to Omniscient One. So then you see that morality is one aspect, and it's related with karma, and that's the other aspect, right? If you take refuge, that you see in the Lam-Rim exactly structured like that. You contemplate the suffering lower realms, then you take refuge in Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. Then the Buddha said, okay, if you don't want to be born in lower realms, you have to focus on law of cause and effect, and then live in accordance with law of cause and effect, practice morality. And that's exactly what Lama Zopa Rinpoche said. If you practice morality, that's relaxation. Because if you practice morality, you live accordance to this law, and you just go create the right causes for future happiness, right? Yeah, so then if you practice morality, you don't have to worry too much. That's it. Yeah. Yeah. I mean not to worry too much, but yeah. What else can you do? So if you practice morality, then you're going the right track. Yeah. Then you make prayers, of course, and then you just keep going. So you don't have to be too much worried about things in the next life, you see. And then if you generate faith in that morality, it gives you so much peace of mind and so much kind of kasa. That's exactly what it means when we say, there's a quote by the Buddha, right? Kasa. Jimbalonje trinki de. That means from generosity comes prosperity, and from morality comes happiness. That's the result of happiness. Believe it or not, when we were studying in the monastery for 20-something years, every topic has its own feeling. When you study the Abhishamalankara, I talk with the monks here, they know also. If you study Abhishamalankara master program, or it's like, this division, that division, meditate, memorize and debate and this, that, There's a lot of work. You get really kind of very exhausted. I remember we were studying the Perfection of Wisdom Sutras, the Abhishamalankara, for 6 years. It's very exhausting. There's new division. Okay, tomorrow another one. So it's constant like that. So it's hard work, but inspiring because it's all a part. Then you study the middle way, and then surfing, because it's kind of, it's just one topic for 4 years. and just logic and reasoning. It's very inspiring, you know. So you serve. Then you study Vinaya, and then the mind gets really happy. Not for everybody, because also there's a lot of memorization and divisions, but somehow, there's kind of a feeling of calmness, you know. Of course, you've done all the heavy duty stuff of the previous studies, and maybe that helps also. Because when you finish your geshe, you can see. When you finish your geshe, you put on 5 kg average. Most of us in Gyume, you know. Because in the study program, there was always kind of every day there's debate and prepare, and like daily exam. I was much more skinny at that time. And then in Gyume, I put on 5 kg, and I almost didn't lose it. And then I got a bit sick, so I was eating more when I had COVID, things like that. So then monks here were complaining when I came. It's 2 years ago. I said, "I'm like, you're fat." And all the monks in the monastery, all my classmates also put on weight, so they just also talk about themselves. But when they told me, "No, I'm like, you're getting fat." Yeah. But that's really true. Once I was walking with Yangshi. He came to London one day, before pandemic, I think. So we went for a walk to the river. And then he said, "Namdak, it's true, isn't it? When you become a geshe, you have so much time." It's true. London, Jamyang is quite a busy center, but compared to what you do normally in a monastery, and especially in Gyume, you know, I don't have to wake up like 3 o'clock in the morning or something, or, you know, it's kind of much more freedom, you know. I mean, freedom, like that. So, so morality, that's what I said. Morality brought us kind of peace. And other people feel that. Who come to our monastery, they're not interested or not Buddhist or even skeptical. They still feel some peace of mind. Very interesting. Yeah, I mentioned it many times. That Dutch TV crew who came to make this program called Klasgenoten. I don't know, the Caro still exist or not? Yeah? Anyway, so they also came. They saw so many places. So interesting. They went to, because they're only looking for people who are crazy like me, who did all kind of, you know, completely different things with their life. So first the interview on over the telephone. Those days was no Zoom, it was just over the telephone. Check if Namdak was okay, not too crazy. So they said, okay, he looks, it sounds normal. So they sent this TV crew, and they went to so many places, many cultures. And they're always busy people, you know, making this shot, that shot, and from morning till evening. And then they said, in the end, "Wow, interesting. We were busy, but we felt a peace of mind we never experienced before." So that's really interesting. That's the community, right? Yeah. So then you see that morality has incredible benefits. Yeah. And that's what it says also in the Mahayana precepts, and Lam Rim, you put a lot of emphasis, you know, to stop war and things like that. And if there's a, you know. Of course, we only have a few people here and there, but if you can imagine, if you have a few 100,000 people taking Mahayana precepts in a place, then definitely has effect, you know. Yeah, but yeah, unfortunately, there's not that many people interested in these degenerated times. But so then you can see that the actual refuge in the small scope is this morality, right? Yeah. So we have 2 causes for taking refuge, right? We have the fear, in this case of the small scope, the fear for the lower realms, yeah, and then the faith in the method that prevents you from falling in that fear, yeah. So which is the practice of morality, yeah. So it's true, because if you practice morality, you just don't create the negative karma that caused you to be born in those states. And if you practice morality, you purify at the same time, using the 4 opponent powers, you purify the negative karma that you created in the past related to those activities, right? So if you take Mahayana precepts, for example, or you take the lay vows for your life, then you should think every day you could do that. Or when you take the Mahayana precepts to say all those negativities of, you know, the body and the speech. Think about the 10 non-virtues. You know, I've created in the past. By taking these precepts, may that be purified. And then you can purify quick. Mahayana is very powerful. I was very stupid when I was young. I did a lot of fishing with my father. You see, that's exactly what it is. That you grow up in a place that people engage in these kind of aspects, and then you just follow, So then, when I became Buddhist, oh my God, I didn't kill that many, but yeah, that's so sad. So then I asked Lam Rimshi one day, and Rimshi said, I killed maybe. Rimshi said, did you, for eating? So yeah, Rimshi, how many? Rimshi said. I said, yeah, I don't know, maybe 100 or something, 200. No, sure. Rimshi said, okay. And then Rimshi said, 7 days, my own precepts. So wow, it's quite amazing, right? So then you can see that the mind precepts are very powerful, So not just for practicing morality, but probably also for purifying. Then of course, and Rimshi said, motivate yourself well and dedicate for all those beings you killed, So then you can see that doing Mayana precepts for that can be, a great, strong purification, but also a practice of morality, right? Or the lay vows, things like that. So that's, that's the refuge, the method. Yeah. So we should generate faith in understanding. So we already see that if you don't harm others, or you practice morality, then you prevent yourself from creating causes to be born in the lower state of rebirth, right? And then with the correct motivation for opponent powers, you purify the negativities you created, before, and now you do the opposite with practicing morality. So then it's kind of the method, So then you generate faith. Yes, that makes sense. So that's what we call the two causes for refuge, right? You generate the fear for the suffering lower realms, and then you generate faith in the three jewels. And of course, the main faith on the small scope is then what the Buddha said, okay, if you take refuge in me and the Dharma and the Sangha, then okay, this is law of cause and effect. Live according to that. Practice the morality. Abandon the 10 non-virtues. Yeah, that's the advice the Buddha gave after you take refuge, right, in the small scope. So that makes sense. So let's do a contemplation on that to recall the suffering of possibility and suffering of animals and spirits and hell states we can fall into, and then generate a kind of wish not to be born there, right? And then generate faith, what we just tried to talk about, the faith of conviction in, yes, that makes sense. If I practice morality, I prevent myself from falling into those states, right? And then that becomes your refuge, right? Of course, you take refuge in Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, but then the actual practice is the practice of morality, and then you combine it with prayer and those other aspects of patience and generosity and things like that, Of course, the actual refuge is a true path and true cessation. That's true, But going to the small scope, that's the starting point. So let's do a contemplation. So first, we do the counting of the breath. So count from 1 to 10. So do that to develop concentration, right? So let's do that for about a minute or two. Yeah, so then imagine in front of yourself Sakyamuni Buddha, yeah, aspect of the Buddha, but nature of one's teacher, right? So imagine the Buddha like that in front, and then you build up the image, from the throne and lotus, and that was seated, the Buddha, full lotus position, made out of golden kosa, made out of three-dimensional light. So build up the image for half a minute, and then whatever you've built up, try to focus on that for about half a minute, or think the Buddha is actually there, right? Okay, so do that for the next minute. Okay, so then look around yourself and see the countless beings in the animal realm and the wild animals, right? And not the pets, but the wild animals. And then and different spirits experience different suffering and hell beings. So look at them and think, constant suffering, So I have to, first of all, make sure I don't fall into that, but also I have to help them, And for that purpose, you make request to Guru Buddha in front. And the Buddha is very pleased with your intention, and then from his heart come this 5 colors of light, but mainly white in color. To this tube or this string with a nectar falling down. So to your crown and the crown of all beings. So think you receive this white nectar light for about half a minute or so. And then think you're completely filled with this white nectar light and completely purified. No obstacle specified. And then again look at the suffering of those beings and then make request to the Buddha to help you to progress in the Lam-Rim, in particular now. Understanding refuge, right? And then this time this 5 colors of light come, but mainly yellow. So that bestows the insights and realizations. So do that, and you can recite the mantra quietly for yourself if you like. Otherwise, just the visualization, also fine. So do that for about half a minute. then think you're filled with this yellow nectar light, right? The mind is completely flexible to understand the topic of refuge, So then analyze or remember, reflect upon the things we did in the previous session, right? That there is a possibility of consciousness to dive into ovum sperm, or a fertilized egg, very small, so it could be a human, it could be an animal. And then you're stuck in that life and see the possibilities, right? Of the suffering of animals, for example, if you're born there, it's eating each other and fear and hunger and thirst, and heat and cold, or being burned alive in a kind of bushfires, something like that, wildfires, being eaten alive by a shark and just take you into pieces as a fish. Yeah, so see the intense suffering constantly of the animals, the wild, So if you're there and you're one of those yourself, if you're being bitten into two parts, or constant fear of being killed, or hunger and thirst and weak, and so see how that feels, Yeah. So analyze that for yourself for about a minute or so. And then in a similar way, that if your consciousness is in this death process, and you lose your connection with the external world and your body and things like that, then your consciousness just goes away and leaves your body and go in this bardo state. So is that possible? Then maybe it's possible to have a kind of similarity to that, right, in the spirit realm. A subtle body and go here and there, and this confusion constantly. Fear of other spirits that try to attack and protect their territory. And there's no food to be found, and no drinks, no water. Yeah, so see and fatigue, always being, chased by other spirits, and kind of constant fatigue. Yeah, with different spells put on you and kind of burning and things like that. So see that the possibility is there. And then also, because different types of attachment to your own happiness without sharing anything with others, Yeah, so those kind of things. Born in spirit realm, and see if that is kind of how that state is, being confused, very hungry, and no food, no drinks, constant fear, and then fatigue. So how would that be? For one day is difficult, but if you have that for years, then it's very unbearable. So imagine the possibility, and imagine how it is for yourself to have that experience of those sufferings. Yeah, analyze it also for about a minute or so. And then, if that's possible, then maybe it's also possible to have similar states with more suffering, of having committed a lot of violence in previous lifetimes, or harming others, or killing and torture others, then that might propel you in a state of constant violence, of being harmed, and killed, and like hellish states, something like that. So see that maybe there's a possibility for that as well, and how that is if you're in that state. So also analyze that for about a minute. So then you see that if you're born in either of those three lower realms, it's very difficult to get out. There's just constant suffering, right? So generate a wish not to be born there. And then come to that conclusion. And then focus on that conclusion for about half a minute. And then see who has the power to prevent me from falling in that state. So then, the Buddha cannot perform magical tricks, but the Buddha is teaching us, law of cause and effect, in relation to that, the morality, right? So if you practice morality, then you prevent harming others. So you prevent yourself from falling into those states, right? If you practice morality of abandoning the 10 non-virtues, for example, or the 8 Mahayana precepts, or lay vows, then you cut down so much negativities. And you don't only cut them down, or you don't create them anymore, but also you purify previous committed negativities of body, speech, and mind, right? If you practice the morality of abandoning the 10 non-virtues. So analyze if this is really true, and then so analyze for yourself for that for about a minute. And then, having seen that, I think, yes, I'm going to practice morality. That's my refuge. And I'm going to make prayers based on that practice to achieve a precious rebirth, to progress and to help those beings in those states, to progress on the spiritual path. And next to morality and this prayer, also I'm going to practice patience and generosity in order to get the right conditions in future states of existence, right? So come to that kind of determination for yourself or promise for yourself, and focus on that also for about half a minute. So then to conclude, then we make a request to the Buddha to bestow blessings, inspirations to actually do that. So then we dissolve the merit fields, as we established that this morning. Remember, there's the 5 groups of the Buddha in the center, and then the 4 groups around it. So I think all the lineages of the methods on the Buddha's right, our left, right, they dissolve into the central figure, the main figure, Maitreya. And then the lineage of the wisdom on the Buddha's left, our right, they all dissolve into Manjushri. And then the gurus and the deities, and they dissolve from down below upwards. So the protectors, they dissolve Daksdakinis. Daksdakinis dissolve in the Shravakas, and dissolve in the Prachekas, and dissolve into Bodhisattvas, dissolve in the Buddhas, and dissolve into deities of Kriya Tantra, dissolve into the deities of Charya Tantra, and dissolves in the Yoga Tantra, and dissolves in the High Yoga Tantra. And that dissolves into one's guru in front. And then behind the Buddha, there are the 5 lineages, right, of the Mahamudra in the middle, and then Krisamaja and Yamataka, and then also Hiruka and the 16 drops. So they all dissolve into Vajradhara. So then we have the Buddha in the center, Vajradhara behind, Maitreya on the Buddha's right, and Manjushri on the Buddha's left, and in front one's own teacher in the form of Lam-Tsukapa, you could think. And then those 4, Vajradhara, Maitreya, Manjushri, and Lam-Tsukapa they dissolve into the thrones, dissolve into the throne of the Buddha, and then they dissolve into the body of the Buddha, right? And that dissolve into the Buddha, and then of the merit field, dissolve into Guru Buddha. You visualize in front of you or on your crown. And then if you have visualized in front, then the Guru Buddha comes to your crown, and then facing same direction you're facing. And then the throne dissolves into lotus. And then the Buddha becomes smaller. Descends to your crown, throat, and level of your heart. You imagine that the Buddha's mind becomes one with your own mind, right? So they can stop. Then do a bit of transmission for 5 minutes. And then, so maybe first the Kasa. The Precious Master instruction, the outline. Tambo give chung dang tumo langi rembo lo jongwa la ni. Ji den ji ma de ne gi lo ge wa dang ji de ji ma de wa tap tembo tambo la ni ji den de ring de mi ne ba ji we je se de ma dan ji de ji ma ji tar gyurwa do ni gi de do gi sambo tambo la sum ji wa ma demba ni mi demba pen ji wa den zo nge Tambo la truk unju mi dawa ni mi ju Jamyang mi du ni mik du gyang nam da mi du ba ni mi du ba la ne ten dang da ba ni mi ra ni ma rung we je ba ni mi ji ga gyu ba shin de ji gyu ba ni mik ni ba dan ba pen yun la truk dun jewe penyun, top jewe penyun, to ma gyal jewe penyun, bada gyal jewe penyun, da ma gyal jewe, da ma gyal jewe penyun, chi gama kashin, droshinde, chiwa penyun. That's very nice. That's a very nice language. That when you remember death and the permanence, one of the benefits. Then it says the sixth one. Chikar, when you die, kashin drushinde. Ka means like. Shin means shin tru means to completely die like that. Yeah. Kashin. This Tibetan term is very interesting. Kashin drushin. It means like you pleased to die. You like and you're pleased. Yeah. Because if you contemplate death and impermanence again and again, you practice accordingly and then you just completely like that. It's a very nice language. Chi ga ga shin dru shi shin shi wa pen yun sung ba chi wa dan ba zul ngu la ni sa chi wa gu zhu su sang ba chi wa nang ba gong bao dang bao la sum nye ba chi wa sang ba nam chi nye sang ba chi we tse ju ma to gang gi kyang mi pen ba sang bao dang bao la sum chi da gi nye ba on wa gengi gyang dogba groktu meba tse de nu ju meijin tin je wa ma che de yoba ma che de yoba sun be tse yang ju da wa long je meba ji wo ni ba nam ji nge wa sambo la sum ji zambo ling zambo ling ba dang gom ni du ki tse nge ba meba chi we gen gi mang xing zhe shui be gen de nie jiang chi wa la nge ba me ba lu jin de nam chu ba jiang nam chi wa la nge ba me ba sum ba chi we tse che ma to gang gi jiang mi pen ba sam ba la sum nor she ne lam de gi lu gi jiang mi pen ba sam bo ni ba ji den ji ma ji dar gyu wa Jowa ni gi den de samba la zum nya wa yi da dun do yi du nao dambo la shi sen je nga wa chen bo du nao samba ne kor du nao samba zhang be nan du nao sambo ni ze wa nga wa du nao sambo dambo la sum de gong ye ji cha zhang gi du nao sambo sumba dun du nao la nga Chigi sa wadu na lenshin tu mugi du na lenshin tu mugi du na sa changi du na tre kumbe du na ge jin ju be du na nipa ji ma jigden ji ma de watapla temba la ni temba ju ba go dang ba kyap du jong wa dang de du tab gi chi we le de gi li chi de ba o dambo la nga gu la ten kya su do we yu gang la ten kya su do we ji tar ji tsam gi ji ab su song wa tse kya su song we pen yan kya su song we lab jiao ni ba yu gang la kya su do we la ni kya su yu gyab yu ngu song we ngu dang de kya su ngu we gyum sen song ba la shi yun ten shi be go na kya su do we kye ba shi be go na kya su do we ke len be go na kya su do we shen de mi wa wa go na kya su do we shi be pen yun la ge nam be sang ye be ju be dong be tam je gi ten je ba sak be la gi de ba nam ba se be gyu we sun nam kya jin be la de su ba mi da mi ming gi ne ba mi ju ba nge sun de mi tung wa ji sambo dun tam ju du ba nye de chang ya wa ho nyu de chang ya wa ho nga ba la ja ji ma la so ze la ja tu mon we la ja tam ba la ni ga ba la ja du ba la ja ni ba tu mon gi la ja la tu kyun jo sum gi yun den den ba go ne yang da ya de gya zu zhu wa ga den den ba go ne ji sa ji dung gi bin zhong zhu pu gi ju ba xian gya su zhu wa gyu ba pen yun den ba go ne ni lan sung den zhen lan sung gya su zhu wa ja wa kang gi je gyang kyun ju sum la ganju zum la gen jeba kunju zum so gam jeba gen shegi ji shegi gi jirmi pambo ho niba de la. Okay, then stop there. So we did the refuge part. Yeah. Okay, so then maybe we do short dedication because we're planning to do Q&A today. So we do short dedication, and then with those who don't like to come to Q&A, they can go. If those would like to stay in retreat, because sometimes Q&A can be, talking about things. So if you like to not do that and like to stay in the retreat mode, then that's perfectly fine, right? Then you can just leave after the dedication. And those who have questions or would like to stay during the Q&A, they can just stay, and then we do Q&A for about, 20 minutes or so, depending on the questions. Yeah. So that's just dedicate with short dedication, meaning 2 bodhicittas, and our future lives net apart from precious guru, right? And progress on stages and paths. Yeah. So that's Janjo semjo rinpoche magye panan gegyu chi yaba nyamba meba yang gone gonde bewa toni tawa rinpoche magye panan gegyu chi yaba nyamba meba yang gone gonde bewa gewa gunde yanda lama da dame chugi bela lonje Sadan lamgi yundan razoni doje changi kobanyu to show. Yeah, so then maybe if people like to stretch legs, then also possible. Maybe 5 minutes for those who stay, right? Those who just like to stay in retreat mode, then just quietly you can leave, that's fine. But those who have questions or like to stay, then they can do that as well. Yeah, it's up to the individual. Yeah. For online people, same thing. People online, if you want to stay in your retreat mode kind of thing, then you can do that, no? Yeah. And if you like to stay for the Q&A, then also you can do that. So it's up to you. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, okay. Cheers. Yeah.
Okay. Good?
Yeah, good.
Okay.
Everything good?
Okay, maybe in the Gompa first, and then I've got some questions that have been submitted via email as well from the online participants, so we'll try and get through as many as possible. Is there anybody in the Gompa who has a question? Okay.
Thank you for your teachings. On Sunday, you mentioned that there are 4 periods of teaching. I got fruition, transmissions, and signs, but the second one I missed.
What do you have? Manifest?
Manifest, maybe I missed. Fruition,
Yeah, fruition or manifest, that means the first period is that people who attending the teachings were highly developed in previous lifetimes, right? So just when the Buddha for the first time taught, they got the realizations, right? So we call that fruition or manifest. That's the first period, right? Just at the time that the Buddha was present and gave teachings, right? Yeah. And then there's a big period of practice that in order to get the fruition, in order to get the realizations, people have to depend on many teachings and then to put it into practice, right? So that's the period of practice, you could say. Then the third period, maybe you missed that one. The third period is, so then at the second period, if people practice correctly, they got the realizations, and it's quite some people who could do that. Yeah? So that probably now is coming to an end, because in Tibet we still saw quite some experienced meditators at the time of Milarepa and before. But we remember there's a story that Padamba Sangye came to Tibet and they met Milarepa and Padamba Sangye. And then Padamba Sangye said, in India, they were sitting on a piece of grass. I know the story. Yeah. So then I don't know which one bent a little bit, but then Padamba Sangye said, in India there's almost nobody who has this anymore. And then in Tibet there's only a few. So that's kind of the period of the second period, right? That people can get the realizations, but they have to put to the practice and receiving teachings, not like the first period. First period is just by listening and you get it, right? Then the third period is the period of transmission. That the teachings can still be transmitted, and there will be a lot of transmission-based teachings. And there will be a few people who can practice, but much less than the previous period. And then the last period is only signs. So that probably, there's a Buddha image, or people say, I'm Buddhist, but for the rest, there's no understanding of Buddhism or education or practice left, right? So that same we see in other traditions, in Hindu tradition, or Christianity also, you see same thing, right? There was a period there people really got the understandings and realizations, but then there's kind of less, and now you see in certain Hindu traditions and maybe a certain aspect of Christianity, also there's just a church and people go on Sunday, but for the rest, there's no really in-depth study and practice anymore, right? Yeah. So in Buddhism will be the same after some time, right? Yeah. Yeah, the 4 periods. Yeah.
Thank you.
But I didn't see a source referring to timelines or something like that. That this first 100 years this, and then next 100 year that. But that's just a general, for periods. Yeah.
Anybody else in the Gompa here?
The source for that, there's many sources, but one source I saw very clear is from Nyingma tradition. Jigme Lingpa was a great master, and that's an English translation of the precious treasure. The treasure of precious qualities. That's what it is. So there's 2 books. The first book is Lam-Rim based. It's a sutra system. And the second book is maybe only read that if you have a Dzogchen initiation. It's maybe better. But the first book you can read is sutra based, right? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Geshe, I have a question about the refuge field.
Yeah.
So you describe it, and then below Lama Tsongkhapa is all the gurus.
Yeah.
So how do I organize the gurus?
Ale.
In which order? Yeah, and also how to deal with teachers who passed away, like
Ale.
Rinpoche.
Yeah.
Can you still
Yeah.
visualize the, as
yeah.
we remember Lama
Yeah.
Rinpoche?
So the main, there's Sakyamuni Buddha, and then in front is mostly in the aspect of Lama Tsongkhapa is your root guru, right? Or the person who for you was the most beneficial or influential teacher, right? You could do that, and then just around on the right and left, as you have Lama Tsongkhapa and the two sons. So in a similar way, you could have two other teachers or something like that, or just more teachers next to them in a row. To group them, just all the teachers you have. You could do that, or that's one option. Or you could just think that Lama Tsongkhapa and the two sons or something like that is just an embodiment of all your teachers, right? So you could do it in various ways, but also if you visualize them individually, because individually you have relations. Oh, I received this from this teaching, and this teaching made so much impact on my mind from this teacher. So especially when you meditate on the kindness, right? Then light comes out from Sakyamuni's Buddha heart, and then you have all your teachers there in ordinary aspect, right? Normally in a merit field, you can choose either ordinary aspect or in the aspect of Lama Tsongkhapa. Yeah. But in particular, when you remember the kindness, you put them in the ordinary aspect because that's the way you receive teachings from them, right? Yeah. So then, if teachers are still alive, then mostly we don't visualize them on thrones. We just visualize them on cushions, right? As they normally sit when they teach. Yeah. So that's kind of an aspect that's been explained in the Georgia commentaries, that lineage. But yeah, when they passed away, then you can do either on a cushion or on a throne, right? Either in the form of Lama Tsongkhapa or, as they appeared to you before. Yeah. Or you could just have one, right? If this visualization is too complicated, you can just have what we do in the main meditation, is just one Sakyamuni Buddha. That's the nature of all your teachers, right? Yeah, because all your teachers have the same nature, if you think they're all Buddhas, but just show different aspects. So they all have the same nature and belong to one particular aspect, Yeah? Yeah, that's true. Yeah, there's many stories like that. As soon as you have put a discriminating factor, that's how His Holiness always explains it. As soon as initially you can check the teacher, right? But as soon as you have a discriminating factor, and then you just receive one verse of teaching or one verse of transmission, then that connection is made, right? So that teacher you put in your merit field, and you try to see as a Buddha, right? And that's the same what that teacher said. If you see the teachers as ordinary beings, then the realizations will not come, right? So that's kind of, that story, same thing, yeah? That if you don't visualize these teachers, you have a discriminating factor, this is my teacher, then, it can create maybe an obstacle or something like that. It's cause and effect relationship, right? It's karma, Yeah. So that, then you visualize, you can visualize all of them and then just walk on that. Because with certain teachers, as soon as you meet them for the first time, you feel a connection. Yeah, for me, same thing. But with certain teachers, it takes more time. Although you already decided it is a person with all the qualifications, but still, for your mind, from that person's side, is already could be fully qualified. But from your mind, you still have to work on generating faith and respect, right? So that's just a matter of contemplating on these points, Yeah. No. Faith. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's inference that produces the realizations, right? But in order to produce the realizations, which is reason-based, right, as we do in our analytical meditation, that we constantly do, we have a reason, we prove something, we come to a conclusion, and we focus on that conclusion, right? So that's exactly the way inference works, yeah. But to make inference possible, yeah, because most of our Lam-Rim contemplations are these correct assumptions, right? Is sometimes the reason is not really there because you just contemplate the outline, just kind of an overview aspect, or sometimes the reason is not very strong because the information behind it is, or the reason is not sharp enough. So that means that it doesn't produce the inference. Yeah, it remains a correct assumption. So with faith, you can receive a blessing. And that can bring this mind in a clarity and sharpness. And it helps you to get it. To have this right reason, to get this right kind of insight. So that's why we say faith is important to produce this kind of insight or inference, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Then we? Yeah, so before inference comes, right, in order to produce inference, because most of our Lam-Rim meditations are these correct assumptions, yeah? So in order to produce inference, you need merit, you need to purify your mind, and you need the blessings, or make supplications. And that's exactly the tradition of Georgia practice when you visualize Guru Buddha like that. That's exactly for that reason, that you make supplications and you receive the blessings, and the more faith you have, the more blessing you receive. That matures your mind, and then this insight comes, or this reason comes, and then it produces this insight, and then inference comes. Because inference is what we say, as we're going to study later in the next, probably one of the next coming up weekends in BP, is this incontrovertible knower, right? So once that inference has been generated, then it stays much longer. Because most of you, probably you experience that in the retreat, thinking about things sometimes move the mind. Much more than if you do it on a daily basis in your daily life, right? But then when you get out of this retreat and you go back home, then for a few days it's still there, but then disappears again. Because it's still this correct assumption kind of level, yeah? So to come to that inference, you just need more merit and more purification and this kind of blessing. And that combination makes the possibility for the crops to grow, right? Yeah, 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 yeah. Alleen, battery. Impermanence. Huh? Dead. Yeah, there was one question here also regarding taking dinner and when the body is weak. Yeah, of course. I mean, the thing is that if you take Mahayana precepts and doing prostrations here, right, then don't push. Yeah, so if you push too much, then you get tired, and then the mind gets negative, and then it doesn't produce a healthy kind of environment for retreat, right? So then, then better just to not take the Mahayana precepts for that day and just have some dinner and relax, a bit more. Yeah. So that's important to do. If you have taken Mahayana precept for the week or something like that, then if you really feel like sickish or things like that, then make 3 prostrations to the Buddha and ask for permission, and then you eat because you're sick or something like that, right? Or you're extremely weak. Yeah, so that's principle of the Vinaya. So to really break the vow of not eating after lunch, to completely break it, you have to have this carelessness, or it doesn't matter. So if you don't have that, and you're really sick, or you have taken the Mahayana vows precepts for a week or 2 weeks, and then halfway through you get really sick, or you really run out of energy, or things like that, then of course you can ask permission, right? And then you have taken the vow, so still you can purify that, right? But the vow is not completely broken because you ask permission for a particular purpose. Yeah, so Of course, best to then, if you decide to take dinner, not to take Jnana precept for that day, and just take kind of dinner then and relax a bit, But if you have taken Jnana precept for a long time and halfway through you get sick, then you have to be skillful, and then you just ask the Buddha for permission, and that's what we do as ordained as well, in a monastic institution. We have the vow not eating after noon, but sometimes it's just hard work. Yeah, so my own teachers told me, Namdak, you're gonna eat. As long as you debate, you eat. Yeah. So then the best thing is then, of course, to make it formal, make 3 prostrations to the Buddha and say, okay, I promised, but, now these conditions are there. And then make it very formal. Yeah, just eat it as medicine. Yeah, because that's what it is. Food is one of the types of medicine, as we say. Yeah, so you can do. And if you haven't taken Jnana precept for a long time and you take day by day, then just decide not to take Jnana precept for the next day or the next 2 days. Or, you have to be skillful, to same with prostrations. If you're really weak, then just do 3 prostrations and relax. Yeah, really, it is important. Because it's a long trek, right? It's a very long trek. It's going to take lifetimes. So better enjoy that trek than pushing yourself, because that will at one point of time create all negative thoughts in the mind, and then you put it aside and that's even worse. Yeah, so it's better to do a bit less every day, but at least you go smooth and happy. Then it's much more beneficial than pushing and running until you're completely exhausted and then give up. Or give up for a few years or something like that, So that's, maybe that's kind of, what you can think. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, hi.
Thank you, Geshe-la.
Yeah.
I have 2 questions, if I may. My main one is the relationship between the information potential, as we've spoken about before, and the consciousness, as we've spoken about today.
Information?
Sorry?
Consciousness and?
The information potential we've spoken about previously, and the consciousness as in the context in which we've spoken of it today with dying. We've spoken of the information potential as a sort of a modern physics summary of karma, maybe also merit, maybe other factors as well. You can fill me in on that a little bit more. And that goes from one life to the next. And in some ways it feels to me as if it's a different thing from the consciousness and the way we've spoken about it, but maybe it's not. And if it's not, can you talk about the information potential going into the bardo body? Yeah. So that's my first question. The second was just a curiosity going round in my head. Well, maybe it's more than that, but I'm wondering, in the spirit realm, what's the equivalent of our dying in terms of the point of time in which the...
When they die, you mean?
The continuity will pass on.
When they die?
Sorry?
When the spirits die?
In the spirit realm, yes.
Yeah, when they die, right?
Sorry?
When they die, when the spirits die and go.
Yes, or whatever the equivalent is of dying there.
Okay,
As I said, my main question is the first one there. Thank you.
Yeah. So there's different interpretations what these imprints are. Yeah. If you stop a particular activity, either positive, negative, or even perception, right? If you look there, then you look there, then that perception stops, right? So, but that perception, although it stopped, it leaves a potential in your mind, right? Because you can remember it. So every activity we engage in, physically, verbally, or mentally, every second, and that activity comes to an end, that information is never lost. Yeah. So then, what is that information and where is it? That's a question. Yeah. So in the Prasangika view, there are certain scholars, because there's a lot of debate regarding these points, right? So there are certain scholars, including one of my own teachers, who says that it's this non-associated compositional factor. Mean it's not consciousness, it's not matter. It's something that is impermanent, because that's the interpretation of the Prasangika, in particular, according to Lama Tsongkhapa. So it is impermanent, it's not consciousness, it's not matter, it's this non-associated compositional factor, this rest group, right? So that means that for us it's very difficult to comprehend that, because it's kind of what David Bohm calls a hidden variable, right? Yeah. Or I mentioned that in Jigme Limpa's writings, that this bird takes off, and there's initially a shadow, and goes high up in the sky, no shadow. But the bird is still flying, and when it comes back, the shadow is there again. Yeah, so that means this information that is not really physical, is not mental. So that information is there. What I find it the most interesting correlation in information theory, and that is not matter and that is never get lost, is this hyperdementia kind of evidence. That there are people who can remember everything of their life. There's not many, but there are people like that. You give them a date 10, 20 years ago, and they know exactly what happened. Right? What the weather was, what was on the news. It's very interesting science. So we don't remember. That doesn't mean that information is not there, because other people can remember it. And that information is, or those imprints, as we call them, they're not consciousness, they're not matter, according to most interpretations according to Lama Tsongkhapa, and many scholars. So that means that information is there, never gets lost, but can be activated. So in a similar way, David Bohm says the implicate order, right, or the hidden variables. Yeah, there's many physicists in that time of David Bohm who talks about these aspects of hidden variables, And Aaron Schrödinger, before that, he already said in his book of life that information is stored in non-locality, which is very similar to what we talk about with a non-associated compositional factor. It's not local, it's not related to locality, but it is in the nature of relationships, cause and effect relationships, right? So that means that every activity that we do and that comes to an end, that information is there, and that has a correlation with our continuity of consciousness, right? Yeah?
Thank you. So it's not, if you like, piggybacking on the consciousness into the next life. It's more just in a cloud that the
it's like a cloud,
continued
like
on can draw on.
Yeah, this is maybe a good one. It's kind of
Thank you. I think I've got my
now we store
concepts,
everything in the cloud, right?
Yeah.
But there's no real physical cloud. But there's a correlation between our computer and the information that is stored in a non-local space. So then when you activate that information, it comes. Right? So that's very similar. There's this relationship between your computer and the cloud. In a similar way, there's this relationship between your consciousness and this information. And that's why people would have this hyperdementia. That's exactly why they can access that information and remember things. So that's, you could, cloud. Yeah. Yeah, I went to Google. I will tell them, I use your cloud. Yeah. So, that's maybe a good one. Yeah, because that correlation between those two, that dependence, so to say, and that's exactly what Carlo Rovelli is strong on, because Carlo Rovelli doesn't like the idea of hidden variables. But he talks about these relations, which is very interesting. Yeah, that talks about the same aspect, that this relation of the information is a property of a particular aspect of matter, right? So in that way. So that means in certain schools we say is the main mental consciousness, and other schools we say is the alaya, the mind basis of all, right? And other schools like Prasangya say is the mere continuity. Yeah, in relation with the high show tantra, is just the mere continuity of your most subtle mind and the most subtle winds, right? Yeah. So then when we study, in the end, in the basic program, the Vajrayana, these things are very interesting, being explained. Yeah. So then our spirits die. It's very similar, same as in the Bardo. They don't have a coarse dying process like us, right? But their life comes to an end. Yeah, so they have similar aspects of that their consciousness leaves that dimension. Yeah, they don't have the same things as the elements dissolving as a human body, right? With the science as we just described today. But they also have an aspect that the life comes to an end, and some have maybe clairvoyance where they go, and some do not. Yeah, so that's a similar aspect. But it's just that karmically, same if you wake up in the morning, right? So it's a similar thing for spirits. They just come out of that state. Or if you're in the meditative state and you come out of that meditation, it's the same thing, right? That spirits, they step out of that dimension, or be born again as a spirit or as an animal, or that depends on karma and conditions, right? Yeah? Yeah. I haven't seen any scriptures describing in detail how spirits die, but I can imagine it's similar to that, you know? Same as the Bardo beings, no? Very similar, yeah. Although the spirit realm is much longer, because the Bardo being is much shorter period of time, right? Yeah.
Okay, so I think for the people online, we might have to wait until the next session, and we'll start with you. I've got your questions, and maybe we take one more in the Gompa for tonight.
There's many more, or what? Yeah. Two, yeah. I'm okay. Yeah. Yeah. Shoot.
Tujushegisla. So thank you so much for very kind guidance. And I have two, I think they're very simple questions, and apologies if it is too simple. One is talking about our teachers and incredible kindness they have been giving it to us time and again. For me, yes, all our teachers, but our parents, they've given, without their guidance and teaching, I wouldn't be standing here.
Yeah.
And I wonder how we
Yeah.
place them.
Yeah.
That's one.
Yeah.
And second question is, just to clarify my own understanding, I understood the elements of the animal realms. However, there are many animals who are doing virtuous deeds without them understanding. For example, pollinators. If we didn't have pollinators, the bees, the wasp, butterfly, if they didn't, the seed wouldn't give the crop.
Yeah, or dogs, the blind guide dogs, right? Yeah. Yeah, so what karma do they create? Yeah.
Yes, I would like to hear your explanation about...
So Gaza, first one was Pama, yeah. So the way we contemplate in the Lam-Rim is because we receive instructions of the Lam-Rim from them, right? So your parents also, from the point of view education, or your teachers, right, in school, in college and university, then also we should pay respect to that, yeah. So here there's a difference between respect and faith. As His Holiness always says, I have respect for every religion, but I have faith in Buddhism. Yeah, so here same thing, that faith we generate in the teachers, and respect we generate in teachers, and respect we can also generate in your parents, in teachers in school and things like that, right? And that's also from the point of view of karma. It's an object that is, heavier, or what do we say, if you do something good in relation to your parents or something negative to your parents, that action is heavier than when you do something you don't know or you never met before, because of that connection of being kind to you, right? So that's kind of, and that you can go to the far extent of all sentient beings, because all sentient beings have been your mother. And then you can read Arya Nagarjuna's text. Lingam Rinpoche is going to give, no? Gyabje Lingam Rinpoche is going to give that text honoring sentient beings, or no? Yeah, in praise of sentient beings. So that's a request Lingam Rinpoche to give. That's a very interesting text, because then Arya Nagarjuna said, we respect the Buddhas, but actually we should respect sentient beings, because of their kindness, right? Yeah, so the same thing. Yeah. One thing, and then Kasa, the bee. I mean, the bee helps things like that. But it's not conscious about that. The bee is just attached to the smell and things like that, right? So it's just doing things based on afflictions, right? So there's not, for the bee, probably not really a virtuous deed being created, I think. You know, but for a blind guiding dog, how you call that? Guide dog, yeah. I saw one in Lam-Rim once gave teaching, and there was one lady, Dutch student, and she was blind, and then she had this good dog, and we were there in Bizemortel, this kind of place. I thought, wow, this dog is being showed the room and knows exactly after every session to lead her to the room. It's amazing. So then, of course, then there is a virtuous, because it's an act that is virtue by nature, right? For a bee to collect, how do you call it? Pollen, that by itself is not virtue by nature or something like that, right? But to help a human being, to relieve a human being from suffering, that's virtuous by nature, right? Yeah, so then, although the dog might not have a motivation, right? I mean, they have this care, they take care of their owner, right? But there's not really sitting down, okay, now I'm gonna help, right? That's not really there. But the act is virtuous by nature, right? So I think, yeah, there should be, for the dog, some good karma created, right? Yeah. In a similar way, if the bee goes around the stupa without, that's the exception. That's what Lama Tsongkhapa says in the Lam-Rim Chemo. That Lama Tsongkhapa being such an incredible scholar in philosophy. But he says, with karma, if you don't motivate yourself that it is for enlightenment, you will not, that action will not be a cause for enlightenment. Gesundheit. Yeah, with the exception of a holy object. Yeah, so if a person goes around a holy object without a motivation, it still creates a cause for enlightenment. Yeah. So for the dog, the guide dog is kind of, yeah, probably some virtue is being created, but still it's virtue in relation to samsara, right? It's not virtue in relation to a higher rebirth, or virtue in relation to liberation, or virtue in relation to enlightenment, right? So then that dog creates some virtue, and then maybe in a future lifetime he's been taken care of by others, or there's a human and people take care of him or her, right? Yeah, so that's kind of within samsara, that's kind of, don't think that we say every motivation is a cause for samsara, or attachment, we say, to this life is a cause for the lower realms. But if you don't have that much attachment to this life, and just without this idea of attachment for this life, you just do something virtuous, then yeah, that will ripen in something virtuous, right? Yeah, so I think a guide dog maybe is a good example of that, no? Yeah? Yeah? Yeah. You had one more? Yeah. Yeah, appeared.
I'm wondering about not killing, because it's one of the worst actions we can do, to kill. And yet there is no vows mentioning not eating the flesh of animals. That implies that necessarily we have to kill them to eat them. Yeah. So I'm wondering why it's not in any text. Or I heard some teachers talking about it and mentioning it, but
yeah. So there's one aspect. 3 points. So one aspect is in the Vinaya, for example. It says that if people offer you meat, and you know the animal is not killed for your purpose, then you can accept. Right? That's one aspect. Another aspect is, but still, it is the animal has died before, right? Yeah, so it doesn't specify if there's any karma being created or not. It's just that the Buddha said you can accept that. But if the animal is killed especially for you, then you should refuse it. Well, normally you don't refuse any type of food. But if you know it's specially killed for you, then you should not accept it. Because then karmically, there's a stronger relationship, right? That's one thing. And there's other interpretations that also said that the only way to and that's one quote in the, what's the sutra called? This Okasa. Lankavatara Sutra. That talks about when you can eat meat. And there are different interpretations. So one I just give is when you know it's not killed for you, right? That's one interpretation. Another interpretation is that the animal died of natural causes, that it was not killed in general. Yeah, so then you're permitted to eat meat. But if you're interested in this topic, I still have to translate a text about that, but I didn't have time. But yeah, Rinpoche asked me because Gishoba, the one who passed away 2 years ago, he stayed in Germany or something. So he compiled Kasa, a booklet with all the quotations of the sutras of Kasa. Of the Mahayana Sutras proving that you should be vegetarian. And there's one book also by Shabkar Lama from Nyingma tradition. And if you're really interested, I'll just tell you, one person did big research. He published 2 books. You know that? So his name is Barstov Geoffrey, he's called? So Jeff, I'm in contact, because I'm also working on that other translation. But so he published 2 books by Wisdom, I think, and there's a podcast also by Wisdom. Daniel, from Wisdom, he did a podcast with him, and then I think the title of the podcast was the Buddha Vegetarian or something like that. But he published 2 books. Otherwise we can send you the link later on or something. Yeah, so he did research. So he put all the things together in 2 books, 2 publications. Yeah, he researched in Tibet, and he did a lot of research regarding these topics. Yeah, that could be one. I'm not sure. Could be one. Yeah. Ale, yeah, he did. He was in contact with Jamyang. That's true. That's why I got his contact. You saw that? Okay. So he Faults of Meat or something, he wrote 2 books about it. He did a very extensive scholarly research in I don't know which university, but somewhere in the US, I think. Yeah. And there's a lot of reference in especially in the Lankavatara Sutra and other Mahayana sutras, Mm-hmm. And also Shabkar Lama, this great meditator, was similar to Milarepa. He was vegetarian, and he also wrote various texts, and that's also translated. I think you can find. Huh? But I don't know who published it, but I saw the book once in India.
Yeah, because just to conclude, but just because even if it's not killed for me, but someone else had the karma of killing.
Yeah.
Because,
so if you buy,
I have this wish to eat the flesh, so that's why I'm like, maybe I'm safe in a way.
Yeah.
But still, I because of me and indirectly, someone is going to create this karma.
If you buy meat in the shop, right, it's not specially killed for you, but everything is nature of dependent origination, right? So there is a relationship with you buying the meat that causes people to put more meat in the shop because there's more people buying, right? So there's a correlation there, right? So that's, if you eat meat out of health reasons or something like that, then also, as we just said with Mahayana precepts, just make it formal, just make prostrations and dedicate for the animal with prayers blowing on the meat and that's the best way you can go about it. And there's mantras you can say to prevent the, although it's not killed for you, but still there's a relationship, right? So there's mantras you could say to purify that. Yeah, special mantras for that, or one particular one. Yeah, okay, then we stop here, otherwise it gets late. It's already 9:10 and you have to go to bed, sleep. Yeah, so just dedicate with the 2 bodhicittas. Yeah, so then if there are any questions left, people online, you be the first. On when? The 4th or something?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
Another one.
Yeah, so we do on the next question answer session, yeah? And then we maybe we'll do it more time. And we can do a third one also if there's needed, no? Yeah. Janjo semjo rinpoche magye pana ngegyu chi kyaba nyamba meba yang gone gonde belwa Toni tawa rinpoche magye pana ngegyu chi kyaba nyamba meba yang gone gonde belwa sho gyewa gunde yanda lam game chugi pela lonje sadan lamgi yunda razuni doje changi ko banyo do sho. Okay, thank you so much. Good night. Sleep well. Sweet dreams.